Welcome back, adventurer. This week's creatures have been described as just the worst bathroom attendant, a bargain bin of lipo, and the happiest chappie you'll ever lay eyes on. So come, pull up a stool at Creature Tavern. Adventurer! Excellent timing. We've just fit the new drink. Here, I'll pour you one, while you pull up a stool and listen to me tale of Aka Manto, a yokai from Japanese folklore. Aka Manto translates to red cloak in Japanese, but this well-dressed dementor is also known by several supplementary titles, including red cape, red vest, Manto, meaning blue cloak, and to cover all bases, Akai Kami Kami, which translates to red paper, blue paper. Legend of the Aka Manto appears to have first reared its red-blue cape in the 1930s. One version of events sends us back to 1935, and we're heading back to elementary school in Osaka. A rumour circulated of a man in a cloak who would appear in a dimly lit bathroom in the basement of the building. Within a few years, the story had migrated to Tokyo, giving rise to tale of the Red Cloak. Another origin points to Akubo, Tokyo, in the early Showa era, where Aka Manto was suspected of being a vampire due to the corpses left in areas this mysterious figure was thought to dwell. In some traditions, the legend is even tied to a hairy yokai known as a Kanade, a spirit said to live in toilets and stroke unsuspecting victims, and one will likely cover in a future visit. As for how the cloaked character looks, folks typically describe him as a masked male spirit draped in a long flowing red cloak. The mask conceals his face, though for what reason I'm not sure, as a good few accounts describe him as a handsome and rather charming fella. Perhaps there's more truth in the tales that paint him as a tall man with a sickly, bluish-white face. His authentic self tends to shift from teller to teller. While some say he's a spirit, a ghost, or a yokai, other folks don't buy into the myth at all, claiming he's nothing but a run-of-the-mill serial killer. You'll want to head to Tokyo. The most areas in Greater Japan will do. And once you're there, you'll want to head to public or school bathrooms. Some versions of the legend say he's exclusively haunting female lavatories, but most tellings say he's not bothered one way or the other. His only request is that there's a toilet present. So once you've found a bathroom, head to the furthest stall, or the stall everyone's avoiding, including the custodian of the cloakroom, meaning it's going to look neglected, run down, and in all likelihood, caked in shit. In some stories, it's the fourth stall that's usually the cursed one, as the number 4 is associated with death. Now, before you fire off on a whistle-stop tour of Japan's toilets, you might fancy knowing what you're in for. Legends say Aka Manto follow a consistent script. The show starts most often in the late hours of night. You're desperate to use the restroom, forced to enter the toilet avoided by everyone else. That old, unkept bog. Once inside, you'll be able to finish up your business without interruption. You may even reckon Lady Luck must be watching over you, only to realise there ain't any paper. At that instant, a long, tattered, scarlet cloak manifests, and a voice asks a seemingly innocent question. Do you want red paper or blue paper? Now, your response here will determine your fate. If you pick the red paper, you'll be stabbed or sliced so violently that all the blood on your inside will erupt out in a torturous torrent as it covers your outsides entirely. In some versions, instead of a stabbing, you'll just have your skin flayed and left hanging from your back, giving you your own fetching red cloak. And if you think choosing the blue paper makes anything better, where have you been? I've got a little bad news for you. One story says all your blood will be drained, leaving you pale and blue-faced on the john. While other folks say you'll be strangled, until just like the draining, your face turns blue. And the reports don't end there. Many others contain twists on the encounter. In one telling, your skin permanently changes colours to match your choice. In others, there's an actual chance of survival, and we'll get to that case in just a minute. But even with this touch of luck, there's some that say if you manage to survive, you'll suffer terrible illness and die shortly after. Sometimes the punishment goes beyond death itself. Here you'll end up dragged into the netherworld, never to return to our mortal plane. All because you couldn't hold in a piss. Folks also tell me that the question itself comes in a few renditions, changing the paper out for a vest, hand or tongue. Each version preserves the same fatal consequence, mind. One not so deadly but arguably more disturbing version names red and white paper as your pick. In this situation, choosing red causes a red tongue to rise up from the toilets to lick you, while choosing white paper summons a pale hand that emerges to fondle. In far rarer tellings, the options are red and purple. Here, red still leads to death, but purple grants you your escape. So if you don't fancy betting on the purple showing up, but you've had one too many pints, don't fret. Your humble Tavernkeepers here with a few tips to help you keep your sacred toilet time safe. First, I wouldn't bother bringing your own paper, as if you do, you'll think you've found the recipe for success. Till your cheeks touch the seat, then that bounty of paper will vanish, as quick as a hen's egg on a fox's birthday. Also, if you try to outsmart an Aka Manto by asking for a different coloured toilet paper, cloak, or cape, well, this is where you get dragged to the underworld, or hell, for your cheeky choice. In some stories, yellow paper seems to be the popular choice, but this always results in the occupant's head being forced into the dirty toilet water till they drown. Now what you can do is ignore the spirit completely, or reject both choices. Fables say doing so will cause the Aka Manto to leave you be and let you finish your business in peace. You'll just be without paper. In some stories, students have managed to escape by saying, "I don't need any paper," and this seems to buy them enough time to run out the bathroom before anything worse can happen. Just be prepared to run without wiping. Now, do give me a sec. Need to check the bogs. An Aka Manto would be canny bad for business. Howdy there, adventurer, and welcome to the Big 2-0, episode 20. Just 2 more episodes, and this little adventurer we call a suspiciously good show can drink. Unless you're listening from the UK, then it's probably been drinking for 4 years already. Let me know what you'd like to see on future episodes by posting about the show using the hashtag CreatureTavern on X or Blue Sky. Doing so will help me fuel future finds, and there's a chance your name will appear on the show. You could end up a possessed mule, working to turn the others against us. Or maybe a humble farmhand, licking his lips at the prospect of possessed mule stew. Either way, you'll be able to rest well, knowing your legacy will now be immortalised on a show with at least 20 episodes. And if you're joining us on YouTube, leave a comment. Let me know what beasties you'd like to see, and you too might catch that familiar call known as a name. Now, since you're definitely enjoying the show, why not give us a share? Talk loudly about it next time you're in public or out walking your dog. If you don't have a dog, get one, so you too can take part in this raucous activity. And that's enough chitter chatter for now. You've earned stories of at least one more creature before the next interruption. So let's get you back to the tavern. Now, there weren't any ghosties, but crikey were they in a state. I'm not sure which situation's scarier, to be honest. Right, while I get someone on cleanup, let's keep you sat here with Story of Pishtaco from South American folklore. The Pishtaco pens with a few different names. In central Peru, it's the classic Pishtaco, derived from the central and north Quechua word piste, meaning to behead or cut the throat. South of the Andes, he's referred to as, and I'm going to try my best here, nakwak, nak-ak, or nak-ak. From southern Quechua, nakwe, which carries the same meaning, to behead or cut the throat. And among the Amaya-speaking peoples, particularly in the Bolivian Altiplano, he's called, and I'm going to do my best again here, kari-kari, meaning cutter, karasiri, meaning slaughterer, and likichiri, meaning fat maker. Apologies to everybody who actually knows those names. I have a feeling I may have slaughtered them. Legend of the Pishtaco stretches back to the 16th century. Around 1574, Cristobal de Molina recorded that the indigenous Andes believed the Spanish were killing them for their body fat, which they reckoned could cure disease. This belief led the Andean people to fear and avoid Spaniards, and such fears weren't unfounded, as history reveals that Europeans did indeed use human fat in medicine, with many traditions considering it to have healing powers, and this unusual obsession continued right up until the 19th century. Because of this, the Pishtaco became strongly tied to colonial exploitation and was consistently imagined as a foreigner or outsider. Now, with the history lesson over, let's get into what he looks like. In chatting about, folks describe him as male, nearly always a white man, or gringo, often considered a borderline vampire-like figure, or white boogeyman. In some of life's yarn, he's depicted as an evil priest who drains the fat of indigenous people with an appearance that only helps to reinforce his European identity. Usually taller than the local populace, standing at around 6 foot to 6 foot 6 inches, with a strong but lean build, broad shoulders, and distinctly pale skin. This is accompanied by light hair, sometimes blonde, but most of the stories I read claim grey. And it's always paired with either a full beard or just a tash. His eyes are said to be blue, and reportedly at night they'll flash like an animal's when he locks gaze with another. His clothing too reflects that outsider status, often described as wearing Western or European style attire, including a lovely wide-brimmed hat, a leather jacket or cloak, and rather fetching riding boots. In other cases, he appears in religious garments, such as a classic friar or priest robe. And some traditions even suggest that he updates his wardrobe to blend into the times and avoid suspicion, though he never seems to make the cultural fit. And there were a couple folk that swear they've seen him riding horseback. Beyond the garbs, lore also states our fat-sucking friend of God is never without his two eternal accompaniments: a large, razor-sharp blade and the unpleasant scent of tallow. Finding Pishtaco shouldn't be too hard, as he's an incredibly local legend. The only place he's said to haunt are the remote, indigenous communities in the rural Andean highlands of Peru. Just be prepared for a climb, as these villages sit at elevations exceeding 3,000 metres. Now, if you fancy yourself a Pishtaco hunter, you best know he's nocturnal, a marauder of the sky's dark veil, feared as a blubber bandit of the countryside, who preys on any solitary soul unfortunate enough to make his acquaintance. Travellers, peasants, and indigenous people are all equal in the eye of this fat-stealing surgeon. He's said to lure his victims into the depths of the jungle before running his signature extraction of their body's most delicious resource: fat. Accounts vary on his methods, but the central theme remains consistent. He sniffs out fat. For one of two gluttonous reasons. It's either to fill his belly or his wallet. Some folks tell stories that describe him as more cannibal than vampire, gobbling the fat up and licking his fingers clean, while others emphasise the commercial and ritual value of this stolen asset. Turns out human fat is quite diverse, said to be used in medicine, beauty products, lubricants for machinery, or as ingredients in magical or alchemical rituals. In religious contexts, it's said to have been made into holy oil used in Catholic baptisms and to make candles for churches, or even used to grease church bells. Supposedly, that makes the sound carry further. Now on to how he gets the fat from your insides and into his own. When looking into these methods of extraction, I'd say two words come to mind: gruesome and varied. In the older tales, he employs the time-tested approach. A simple sharp knife is used to slit throats, stab, behead, or disembowel you. Then he ransacks your fat and discards the rest. Other stories say he'll skin or butcher you like livestock, cutting your flesh into strips before hanging them over an open flame, while bottles beneath collect the dripping fat. In certain legends, he wields enchanted instruments. No lutes or drums, no, but syringes or pipes that afford him the capacity to suck fat directly from your body without leaving a mark. However, with this method, over time, you'll grow weak, weaker with each day, till this mysterious condition claims your life only days later. Or maybe you'll suffer the wriggling fate. One tale I found says the Pishtaco will raise his hand toward you, only for you to realise his fingers are writhing like worms. Now as they fall to the ground, you'll be stuck, motionless with terror, giving him the perfect opportunity to attack. Still, I'd say that's a more welcome fate than one particular curious fat extraction variation, where he steals your fat by sucking it right out your anus. And his desire for fat ain't limited to the living. He's also known as a raider of the dead. He's said to sneak into graveyards, exhume whichever grave takes his fancy that day, nick as many bones as his arms will carry, before grinding them down into a fine powder, believed to possess paralysing properties. Some folks tell of him carrying this magic powder with him on his hunts, using it to stun or incapacitate victims, leaving them helpless as they undergo the harvest. So what can you do to keep this insatiable fat fetcher at bay? Well, with this one, there's a good few tips. So lean in and listen well. Firstly, it's well known that Pishtaco will only feed on adults. He doesn't have the palate for children or the elderly. So if you fall into either of those demographics, you're safe. It's also said that the red-black Wairuru beans can be made into amulets to ward against this creature. So before a visit to Peru, just make sure that you have got some of these magic beans under your belt. And lastly, if you've already had an encounter and now you're a few stone lighter, but it seems you're also afflicted with the wasting away condition, there are a few ways to cure this. Number 1, you can kill the Pishtaco. But failing that, you'll need to purchase a little human fat from whoever's selling and burn it using the Wairuru bean and a white egg before rubbing this greasy fix or elixir all over your body. Now, lucky for you, I just so happen to have a few cases of human fat just behind the bar. Fancy a gander? Ah, what a pleasant surprise. Glad to have you around this way again. You know what? I think you've earned this. Yes, go on and click that subscribe button. No, go ahead. I insist. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever lossless lemmings make their nests. Just search for Creature Tavern. And why not celebrate our 20th episode with a review? Be one of the first 20 to say 20 nice or 20 not so nice things about this river of quality audio streaming into your ears each week. Now, with those water adjacent words, we've reached the end of our final break for the day. So put your feet up, kick off those prisons we call shoes, and relax as we get you back to the tavern. Yes, all of these were giving voluntary. Well, mostly. Before I say anything else, let's crack on with our final creature for the week. The Smiling Man from European folklore. Going by the moniker Grinning Man, Walking Jack, or Indrid Cold, this happy cryptid chappie is a human enough figure first reported in 1966. And fun fact, some accounts hint that the Smiling Man has direct ties to the Mothman. But in what way I could not uncover. What I could uncover is that it's certainly not appearance, as witnesses to the Smiling Man describe him as an exceptionally tall fella, ranging from approximately 6 foot 2 inches to 6 foot 5 inches. With an elongated, slender build and overly long limbs. An unfortunate trait that tends to exaggerate his silhouette. His skin is pale, sometimes sallow, or a greyish olive, with a smooth, almost waxy texture, lacking any blemish or facial whisker. If we zoom in on his face, we see that accounts vary. Some suggest he's missing certain key features, like a nose, or any number of ears, while others see him as, quote, nearly human, though he's always got a few constants. Unnaturally white teeth, like he's just popped in a new set of veneers. Small, deep-set, beady eyes that never seem to blink. And that unmistakable detail he's named after. A broad, fixed, supernaturally wide grin. And in the unlikely scenario, you end up facing down a few lanky terrors, look for the one in formal attire, usually mid-20th century, typically a suit, coloured black, or a dark green or blue, paired with a classic white shirt. And folks tell me this attire is always immaculate. To locate this dangerous dapper darling, I've got some good news and some bad news. The good news, he's been spotted all over the UK and the US. So you're a lot more likely to run into him on your travels. The bad news, he's been spotted all over the UK and the US. So there's a lot more ground to cover. To help narrow things down, stick to these settings. He's commonly seen in urban areas. Deserted streets late at night, particularly in residential districts, with little foot traffic. He's also said to be quite fond of hanging about under street lamps, in alleyways, and for some reason on poorly maintained roads. It's also worth checking out abandoned buildings and industrial zones, places where windows or shadows provide vantage points for his observations. And also pop to the peripheries of towns or villages, places where the pathways fade into field, woods or wasteland. You're still going to need to cover a canny bit of land, but hey, maybe you'll run into a few other beasties in the process. When you do find one, be prepared for an unsettling, deliberate, and deeply disturbing set of behaviours. Firstly, he's never been observed speaking, and aside from his fixed smile, he displays no visible signs of emotion, telling of his disconnect from humanity. Folks also describe a sudden, overwhelming sense of fear upon crossing the threshold of his proximity, suggesting he either emits a kind of haunting aura, or maybe it's his appearance alone that provokes such reactions of terror. As we briefly touched on earlier, this fellow's a fan of night, but he's also said to dwell during the very early hours of the morning, particularly between midnight and 3 AM apparently. During those hours you'll find this lanky chap moving in a rather jerky, exaggerated, some folks said puppet-like manner, though sometimes he's said to appear as if he's gliding ever so slightly above the ground. Regardless of which technique he's chosen, it's said his footsteps are rarely audible, even on the gravel or cobblestone. But in truth, you're far more likely to find him in a stationary state. In the stories I've heard, he often remains motionless for long stretches of time, standing upright, facing an individual in complete silence. But once noticed, he'll begin to mimic you. And if that wasn't frightening enough, he'll then begin to pursue you, walking toward whoever thought it was wise to stare at the very tall, skinny, staring guy, and matching their pace, but closing the gap gradually, never rushing, and always with that troubling grin. lore also spells of his ability to manifest and disappear at will. In one account, a child awoke to see him standing over her in her bedroom. Terrified, the child hid under her covers, but she continued to see the smiling man's shadow circling her. With nothing else to do, she closed her eyes, wishing the nightmare's end. And to her surprise, this worked. With the covers down, there was no creature in sight, no window open or door ajar. He'd simply vanished. And his powers don't end there. Some folks told tales of his capacity for premonition or sensing imminent danger. An American investigator named John Keel reported receiving phone calls from Indrid Cold while he was investigating the Mothman, telling him to run away, warning him of an impending disaster. Keel, not one to ignore very scary phone calls saying run away, fled as instructed. And shortly afterwards, the area he was investigating, known as Silver Bridge, collapsed, claiming 46 souls. The Smiling Man, it seems, is a complicated cryptid. He displays human-level intelligence, but almost a complete lack of social awareness. So let's find out what you can do to survive your encounter with this gangly ghoul. Honestly, as long as you can run, or you've got a horse or cart nearby, you'll be fine. From what I can tell, there's not one account of a Smiling Man ever growing violent. So as long as you don't instigate anything, there shouldn't be any of that danger dancing. And with that, we're finished with our last creature for the week. We've learned that if you use the dirty stall, be prepared to run with your pants down. A little human fat might just cure what ails you, and that you shouldn't stare at the tall fella in the park unless you fancy the creepiest walking buddy. And that bell means his last call here at Creature Tavern. So grab yourself one more drink for the road. And until next time, tread carefully, adventurer. You never know when you might wander into the weird